Alright, welcome back. Part 4 of Firewood 101 tutorial for wood rookies. The previous video, I forgot to set out, in case you didn't know what a piece of dunnage looks like. Well, they just cut that out for the band if they want to tie it down. Often it's just square, usually around that size. Talked about the ups and downs of that in the previous video. Okay, part 4. So now we, that is you, me, and our fellow crows and our brethren ditch bunnies, have tried various methods of firewood procurement to review skids and pallets, shipping dunnage, ditch bunnying. Not as easy or as fruitful as it looked at first blush, the ditch bunny thing. The big box stores of firewood, premium price, hit and miss on quality, and occasionally on count, seldom if ever dried properly. So, back to the local newspapers or the internet. How do I explain this? It'll make more sense later on as we become further acquainted with the 3 characters in the subtitle, which I forgot to mention. Your local paper will certainly have Firewood Fred and Slippery Charlie, but not Slick Willie, not likely. The internet will definitely have Slick Willie, for sure. But probably not Slippery Charlie, and highly unlikely you'll find Firewood Fred there. We're seeking to find Firewood Fred, but first, let's meet the other 2 characters. Slick Willie, an A-class sociopath, most likely to be found on the internet as this targets his largest and broadest number of victims. His sole and primary drive is the need to sate, his insatiable drive, to fleece his victims. Well, that sentence didn't really make sense, but neither does sociopathy really as a whole. His philosophy on life is there's a new crop to fleece every year. His psychology on wood is there's money in space. His name and number change frequently, but his modus operandus doesn't. Your wood will be short, wet, and crap. Don't call him back to complain. He just derives more satisfaction knowing you now know he burnt you. That's what he lives for. Slippery Charlie. True story, this one. My roommate Jono a couple of years back said, hey, saw an ad in the local paper. Face cords for about 15% cheaper than we were paying. What do you think? Should we give her a go? Why not? Jono informed me he called and booked a face cord for a trial, had confirmed the price, and that what sounded like an older gent named Charlie would deliver Saturday morning. Saturday morning, Charlie showed. It was freezing cold and windy. Jono and I hustled out as good and smart wood customers should to help unload. As John and I hustled to toss the wood into the woodshed, Charlie made a point of the measurements of his trailer as it pertained to an honest count. First clue we missed. After all, we hadn't questioned his dimensions. We know what they are. Second clue missed. Charlie kept holding up and pointing out the goodly amount of cherry wood his load held. Subnote here, cherry wood isn't really all that great in the BTU scale, but it is nice wood. It looks nice, smells nice, burns nice, and it's quite forgiving as to moisture content. Another point that's relative here is good hardwood has a ring to it when banged together or tossed onto a pile. So does a frozen sponge. Jono and I hurriedly tossed off the frozen face cord, thanked Charlie, who was still pontificating as to the glories of cherrywood. John and I in our haste had missed another point that Charlie had cleverly slid past us. Poplar bark and cherry bark, at some points of age, at a glance can be mistaken, especially when it's frosty cold, covered with a wisp of snow, and you're trusting in nature and in a hurry to get in under the elements. A few days later, John tossed Charlie's load down into the basement, and as he was stacking it, caught the play. Come check out this, he said, laughing. Charlie's load was pushing 25% poplar. Worst yet, it was way past its prime. Poplar's way down there on the scale. If you cut it, when it's young and clean looking, this isn't some, but I mean clean looking, You know, they can be spring and fall wood, shop wood. When it starts getting older, it gets punky and rounds. You can't leave poplar unsplit. It rots just like crazy. So when it rang solidly frozen in the shed, when thawed, you could just about push your thumb into it. John and I just had to laugh it off. Slippery Charlie called Jono back for the next 3 weeks or so, wondering if we wanted some more cherry. The irony is, Slippery Charlie didn't labor any the less, or make any more for fleecing us, than if he just sold us a decent wood. He just had to fleece somebody, that was all. So now we come to Firewood Fred. Who's the man you want, with the wood you want, at an honest and fair price. Firewood Fred is you and I. He was once a rookie. He's been both a crow and a ditch bunny. Firewood Fred has met both Slick Willie and Slippery Charlie and learned the hard lessons. Fred has served his time in the trenches, to coin a phrase. This man heats both his house and his shop exclusively with wood. He knows his woods. He's possessed the two peculiarities. He actually enjoys toiling in the bush producing firewood, despite the fact he's well aware it's back-breaking, highly dangerous work that no one in their right mind would consider to be lucrative, and rarer yet, he's honest to the bone. When you find Firewood Fred, thank your lucky stars, for you can now sleep well at night. Good wood, dry wood, and honest count, reliability, and delivery. When you find Firewood Fred, you want to keep him happy. And this is easy. Don't take your tape measure out to check his load. Fred knows his load is honest to the point of generous. He also knows it's a thief who clutches his purse the tightest. Look at that. Sorry. When Fred says he'll be there, you can be assured he will, for his word is his bond. But realize when he says around 10 a.m., he means around. You might pride yourself in your punctuality, but Fred has constraints in this matter you may not perceive. Well, you may look outside and wonder if the weather affects road conditions in a fashion that dictates perhaps you should reconsider your travel time. Fred has both on and off-road conditions to deal with, to contend with. The municipality doesn't plow and salt into Fred's bush lot. As well, Fred's cantankerous old equipment might be reluctant to start in the bush in the morning and could set his projected schedule back somewhat. If Fred says he'll show up around 10, you can bet hell or high water he won't be later than 11. Fred is, after all, the type of man who'll founder a good horse to keep his word. So, having now realized and accepted that Fred is not the epitome of promptness, it now falls on you to be smart in your own best interests. Your boots are on and you're watching the drive for Fred's arrival, so he rolls in. Coat, hats, and gloves, you're out the door. And hand you Fred's favorite beverage. Fred, of course, does not have a dump truck. After all, he's not the big box store. He's just a good, honest man with a bush-battered pickup truck, possessed of the same love of firewood. Excuse me. Oh, that was good. How was it for you? The same deep-seated, lifelong love, appreciation, and addiction as what you do yourself. You just don't know it yet. You want to stay on Firewood's Fred's A-list, and here's some do's and don'ts. Hustling out prepared, beverage in hand is your first to-do. Next, hand Fred his cash. Don't count it out in front of him. And set about unloading, helping unloading, or stand back out of the way, or whatever his Fred's unloading format is. If Fred feels chatty, chat with him. You'll only learn. Conversely, don't hang up Fred if you feel chatty and he doesn't seem so inclined. He's already running late. Ask Fred if he'd like another beverage upon departure. It's a safe bet. Coffee's no, beer's yes. Do I need to tell you you're stupid if you don't know his favorite brand preference? You want to be and stay on Firewood Fred's A-list. Now that you've suffered all the trials and tribulations of the rookie learning mistakes, Slick Willie, Slippery Charlie, and a host of other wood disappointments you've learned the hard way. Other than making the next step up the evolutionary chain at Firewood, this is as good as it gets. Good, dry, honest count, reliable, known amount, minimizing your storage area problems. You can get him to deliver it once a week, once a month, whatever you want. No worries of running out. You're on his A-list. He won't outsell himself and leave you high and dry. You've got it all now, man. Problem is, you just don't know it. The road forks two ways now, my friend, and I caution you, take heed, for the one choice is a slippery slope indeed. Yeah. I'll blend the next chapter in as well with this. Wood rookie meets a fork in the road. You just blow away those quickly and go sip of beer. Sorry. Lack of editing, lack of professionalism, all that. It is what it is. Thanks for your patience. Wood rookie meets a fork in the road. Now, my friend, if you've come to this far just as a spectator, I fear for you. If you've lived it, then you are almost certainly doomed to take the fork in the road that leads unto the slippery slope from which there is no return. I can't advise you as to choose left or right, no more than I can advise you what's right or wrong for you, my friend. For these are different things for each man. It'd be hard to refute the logic of one who would argue the path, whichever it may be, that makes the most financial sense, is the smoothest and easiest, and doesn't risk life and limb. That path, of course, is to continue to buy wood from Firewood Fred. I think that's a no-brainer. If, however, alas, the fickle finger of fate or the alignment of the stars, maybe it's genetic perhaps, whatever, has now led you to the precipice of the slippery slope of doom, let me tell you what awaits. It's a slow, insidious thing. I'd not say by any means it's wrong. It's not a sickness nor disease. Once it sets in, though, it cannot be cured, eradicated, eliminated, or exorcised. Call it what you may. One of your own most primal DNA strands has awoken, for lack of a better term. You now have what I'll simply call the affliction, and there is no cure. I'll let that hang for a moment whilst you ponder the implications. Perhaps some of you gasp with revelation. Oh no, it's me. That's right, you're the next Firewood Fred. Ha! You have the affliction. There's little point in denial, and no cure for sure at this point. Cannot offer you, my friend, any advisement as to how to ride this slippery slope of firewood affliction you now find yourself in. I can, however, tell you the symptoms, as I recognized them then at the time, and with the clarity of hindsight, and what has transpired so far as I continue with my own incurable affliction. My slide down the slope to the incurable affliction began when I rented a dilapidated old farmhouse and 100 acres of land. There was only wood heat and plenty of standing dead on the fence lines, and so it began. Buddy lent me a couple of cheap little junky 33C saws, kind you get at Canadian Tire on sale at that time for like $100. I'd taken possession of the place late in the fall, and having only Sundays free to cut wood, I went at it. I didn't have a clue. I didn't even know how to sharpen a saw. The internet was only just starting then. Search engines were crude and inefficient. There was little on the web but advertisements and pornography anyways. I spent my Sundays learning the hard way. I burnt through the wood with dull change, pinched bars, etc. It was a total how not to demonstration. It's a wonder I didn't kill myself. I found on Sundays I could cut, split, and haul up to the house just enough wood to last a week. Was, by the way, hauling the wood on a piece of tin that had blown off the barn roof. That's right, saw in hand, wading through the snow, dragging the skiff behind me. Transporting the wood was as labor-intensive and time-consuming as what my ineptness in saw operation was. Following spring, the local hardware store had a 45cc saw on sale for $229. It was a hand grenade. It blew up before the first tank of fuel was done, leaving me with a tree I had to finish dropping with the axe. None too pleased, I returned to the hardware store where the owner informed me I was to call the 1-800 number to find out who locally covered warranty issues. Said proprietor made it quite clear he could give a rat's ass as regarded my displeasure at this turn of events. Made it clear to this individual he was perilously close to need of some dental work. You might well want to give consideration to crossing the street if our paths were so to cross in the future. Lesson learned. Seething, I went down the road 10 miles further to the local authorized warranty repair dude. He was a nice enough fellow. Displayed sympathy to my plight and assured me he would with all haste attend the matter. His business was canoe sales and model airplanes. The fellow was good to his word, and 4 days later I got my saw back. It managed another half tank of fuel before it grenaded again, and this time-consuming cycle repeated itself for a month. The 1-800 number importer of the grenade, it was good. They would overnight courier parts to the fellow with his canoes and toy planes, who would hasten to rebuild it yet again. However, I was finding threatening the standing dead trees on the fence line with the half-tank hand grenade was rather ineffectual. I wasn't really getting a lot of wood in. So apparently slow to learn, but finally wising up, I took the once again freshly rebuilt grenade to my local, well-reputed small engine / chainsaw dealer, where I learned there are 3 levels of chainsaws. You get your homeowner quality, yeah, that's what they call them, homeowner saws. That's the junk you buy on sale. Okay, and junk it is. That I'd heretofore been using. Don't even bother. The mid-grade, often referred to as a farmer's saw. They're okay perhaps for a weekend warrior. And then you have the professional level saws. For a whopping $850, I purchased a 55cc name brand professional quality saw. I asked the fellow if he considered giving me something as to trading in the hand grenade. With a weary sigh, he agreed to give me $50 on the grenade, with an indelible marker wrote NFG on it. I literally threw it onto the part shelf. Lesson learned. Now armed with an actual chainsaw and having upgraded the tin skiff to a cantankerous old Jeep with a trailer in tow, I found my productivity increased considerably. My learning curve was still steep. I continued to pinch and bend bars, and I learned to read trees. They just don't drop where you want them to. There's a weight and bias factor thing to consider there. Watch tree felling videos gone bad. I wouldn't suggest you learn the way I did. The fickle finger of fate must have still been finding me a source of amusement, however, as somehow or another I managed not to kill myself or suffer a grievous injury during this period. My productivity was increasing exponentially, and friends and neighbors, acquaintances, and the like began to inquire if I'd consider selling them wood. Of course I did. After all, I needed to recoup my losses on the grenade, all the bars I'd bent and chains I'd mangled, and so on and so forth. I was at the top of the slippery slope now, and then I just didn't know it. Tune in for my next installment if you like, as the affliction settles its claws further into me. I'm here, I'll just keep going. Part 8. The wood rookie's incurable affliction continues. Alright, sometimes my brain gets ahead of itself, or conversely, perhaps behind its own self. You'll have to forgive me. I do have a point here. You'll have to forgive me. My formal education in the public schools system ended so early as I had to doctor the paperwork to meet the grade 10 requirement to gain access to a trade school. In the words of the immortal Homer Simpson, Lord help me, Marge, I just ain't all that damn bright. What I'm referring to is, I've referred to the wood addiction as an affliction. A couple of different meanings to that word. Look it up in the dictionary. The state of being afflicted, a state of acute pain or distress of body or mind. It's not painful, it's not distressing, but it is a state of being afflicted. And that's why I'm using the word affliction and why I'm explaining it. Okay, so I've got that business sorted out. I was now having more demand for wood sales than my home acreage could supply, so I pursued getting myself a bush lot. Now, some explanation here as to what consists of a bush lot and how to get one. A bush lot can be small, say 10 acres or so, or 100 acres, anything in between. Regardless of the size, a bush lot can be well managed by, say, a second or third generation farmer, or it could be a riotous, neglected mess owned by a city. Small logging outfits will harvest good for lumber trees from tree bush lots. Unscrupuled outfits will rape and pillage the city its bush lot and leave a mess. The difference in productivity / profitability between a tidy bush lot and a mess is considerable. The tops of the trees that have been harvested for timber are left in the bush and contain 1 to 2 face cords of good firewood. A dollar value per top can be offered to the landowner, or if he burns wood, a percentage of the processed wood that is cut and split. Work that out. So as an example, I'll describe a typical deal. I worked with one fellow who had a small 12-acre bush lot that had been harvested 2 years previously. Note as the tops were 2 years old, they were acceptably dry for burning. You know, they could cut them, split them into the truck, deliver. I approached the landowner, having noted by his chimneys he burnt wood. Introduced myself, my interest in the bush lot, said he could check my reputation in any number of fashions if he were so inclined. I forget now the number of tops, but the bush lot's terrain was reasonable, and the conditions the timber harvesting outfit had left it in, they were reasonable. I'm sipping beer here if you don't mind. Here's the deal, Paul, I said. These types of deals usually work one of 2 ways. I can offer you a dollar figure per top, cleaning up with your long-term bush lot management in mind, should you want that. Standing dead trees that should be culled and the like, your bush lot needs it. Now this is a big variable in the equation, whether I'm going to do any or a lot of cleanup or whatever. I could just pay X dollars per top, cut them up and go. The other option is I pay you a percentage of the firewood I process. You've got X number of tops, let's say 1 face each, that's X number of face cords, that's X number of bush cords. I'm just one guy, one saw, and one truck. I got a couple of buddies work for me part-time on the weekends, so I'm in no position to pay up front. The only thing I can offer you is a percentage deal. How does that work, Paul responded. Well, Paul, it seems to me that most outfits offer the landowner 33% of the cut and split wood from the tops. But I know from experience this isn't doable. I know I can't do it anyways. I gotta figure that most people in your position don't know how many cords there are in the tops, and 33% sounds like a good deal. Pay a third. But I have to steal from you at 33% to make any money. Paul blinked at me a couple of times as he kind of processed what I'm throwing at him. I can only give you 25%. You've got quite a lot of standing dead, and in turn for cleaning up the culls and the trails and the like, that's what turns the table for me to make you the offer. Because the bush lot's terrain was a bit challenging. Paul, no dummy, after a moment's processing, said, I don't get the 25% on the standing dead. No, that's to pay for the cleanup and the long-term management you'll benefit from. Here's how I run my books, Paul, I said, pulling said book out. I do it daily. You, your wife, or a camera, count the loads I haul out. First one's yours, the next 3 are mine. You check my book daily, at the end of the day, or out here any time in the bush, whatever. I'll never fall behind any percentage because I've got orders coming in hard and fast, and like I'll catch up later. If I get hit by a bus and my last thought being, oh crap, I'm a bush cord behind Paul. Paul blinked a couple more times, shook his head, and thrust his hand out and said, sounds good to me. Paul never asked to see my book, in fact. I never saw him in the bush when I was there. Although I imagine he must have been keeping an eye on things. During the same time period, I found myself another 2 bush lots as I slid yet further down the slope. Tune in next time as I explain fence line clearing for cash crop farmers as opposed to bush lots. And I'll get into some extent into the economics of selling firewood and why I had more than 1 bush lot at any given time. Then I think I'll wrap up this firewood tutorial with 1 or perhaps 2 more describing a little more on the economics, annoyance, and pitfalls of dealing with the public and the like. One title I'll consider is I Don't Suffer Fools Gladly. I'll ramble on about 3 or 4 typical customer scenarios that leave a poor firewood Fred wanting to either strangle slowly the clown that's pulling his chain or run screaming naked into the bush never to be seen again. And next time, part 9. Again, thanks for your patience with all my aggravations. I hope to see you next time. Hope it's been a bit informative.